Hello, everyone, and welcome to the High Stakes Fantasy Network. I'm your host, Greg Ambrosius, and I'm joined today by a special guest. He is Thomas Libretti of Malvern, New York. Thomas made history last year by winning the NFFC Primetime title and the NFFC Silver Bullet title. Thomas, welcome to the show.
Greg, thank you so much for having me. How's everything?
It's all good. Like I said before, it's freezing in Wisconsin. We need spring, but you said it's been cold out there on the East Coast, right?
Yes, New York, it's been a little chilly to start, the month of May, but today is a good day.
Yeah.
We finally turned the corner.
Yeah, we're seeing a little bit better too. Your microphone again, just a little bit, but yeah, we're starting to see a little bit better weather here too. So this is the first time we have ever met each other, right?
This is correct.
You're in New York all the time. I'm in Las Vegas, so it's nice to meet you for the first time.
Likewise. I heard a lot of good things about you. If they were
Don't believe them all. Don't believe them all, please. All right, so let's set the stage here. You became only the second person to ever win 2 NFFC national titles in the same year. Jeff Dawson and Scott Kelly, they teamed up. They did that in 2017. They won the Classic and the Online Championship. You did it last year. You won the Primetime and the Silver Bullet. You netted a cool $235,000 in overall prizes. I mean, even today, just how surreal is it that you won 2 national titles?
Greg, to be honest with you, I did not understand what was happening while it was happening. And I remember the conclusion of the Steelers game. A lot of guys.
Oh, click that microphone again. It's just going in and out. Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Any better?
Yep.
And I remember a lot of the guys in the industry were reaching out, expressing their congratulations and all that. And it wasn't until a couple of weeks after that where I received the package in the mail.
You got to click it again. I don't know why the microphone's going in and out. Must be that cord.
Yeah, I thought it was. I thought we had a good connection for a second.
Yeah, you sound good right there.
Okay, we'll try it here. But sorry about that. I received the package in the mail. My wife came.
It went out again.
Oh no. Any better?
There we go. Let's try it again.
All right. So yeah, she said that I had a package in the mail. I opened the package and it was the large check.
Yeah.
So once I opened that up and I saw that, then it really hit and set in that, oh wow, this really happened. Then I started reading the archives in the NFFC, and I saw, to your point, where this didn't happen very often. And that's when it really hit home again. And a very overwhelming feeling. It was a lot of fun, a lot of excitement building up to that. And, I can't wait to hopefully do it again sometime.
All right, sounds good. You're going to have to hit your microphone again. I don't know why, but halfway through it just kind of goes in and out.
Great. Do you want me to try just the microphone on the computer?
Sure. Why don't you try that? It's a nice microphone, but it's not working too well.
It's not working very well.
All right, I can hear you now.
Yeah?
All right, so you got the big check. Recount that again.
So when I opened that up, I really started digging into the archives in the NFFC, and it really hit home as far as, wow, this, to Greg and Tom's point, this hasn't really happened very often in their history. And it was pretty surreal at that moment. And like I said, from there, a lot more people in the industry were reaching out. It was settling in again. And it was just a very humbling experience. And, it was a lot of fun, a lot of excitement during that time. So I'm looking forward to competing again this upcoming season, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's a hell of an accomplishment. I mean, we've been doing this 18 years. This is our 19th year now. Again, it's only been done twice. There's very few people that win 1 overall title. You won 2 of them in the same year. What's interesting is that you won 2 overall titles. You only won 1 league title, though, last year, right? You won the Silver Bullet League title. You finished 3rd in the New York Primetime. Now, you were 2nd in points, but you finished 3rd in that league. Talk about how not winning the league title and then you end up winning the overall title. The key is get hot at the right time, and that's what happened, right?
100%. I echo those words. That's exactly what you strive for. I mean, winning the league title is obviously, it should be everyone's goal at the start of the season. But the ultimate goal is to be one of the top 3 and getting in the playoff bracket, because that's when teams, if they just ride that hot train, it can carry you right to the final and some. And that's exactly what happened. Like the right players clicked at the right time. They were the consistent guys throughout the course of the year that were there for me.
Mhm.
But the matchups were perfect. I think it was the Cincinnati Kansas City game that really won off for both teams.
Yeah.
So when you had a guy like, for example, Jamar Chase going off, I didn't have Jamar Chase, but I had Joe Burrow, which neutralized that output. So it was good to have a piece of that action, and the players just got hot at the right time.
Yeah, definitely. So in the prime time, let me just ask you. So you were second again in points in the prime time. You won third place money. You're 77th after the regular season. You made it in the championship round. That's the goal. You're 77th though. Do you feel like you have a realistic chance at that point? Do you know you just got to get hot? Or what are your thoughts at that point? Okay, I finished third in the league and I'm 77th overall. I'm trying to win 200,000.
Yeah, you know, I personally, at that point, I wasn't looking to see if my team can compete and win the overall prize. I'm looking to see if I can perhaps crack the top 10, the top
Yeah.
15, and be happy with that.
Yeah.
But as the points started building up and my guys were getting hot and staying consistent for those 3 weeks, that's when I started saying like, wow, this is interesting. I have a real shot here.
Mhm.
And then entering the final game of the season for the playoffs, I couldn't. I started drinking wine at 10:30 in the morning. I had to calm my nerves.
I like it. You're my kind of guy, except for I'd be drinking beer.
Yeah. So I had to do something just to calm down a little bit. I had a lot of friends that were watching the game and sending me text message. I had to ignore them for a short period of time because I didn't want to jinx anything.
Yeah.
And then things just started unfolding way too quickly. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to enjoy this as much as I can without checking any scores. I'm just going to watch the games as I normally would, or at least try to. And that's what happened.
Yep, that's very good. Okay, let's dive into both of these teams so people can kind of understand how you pulled this off, all right? You designed both teams exactly the same way, and I want to talk about that. You had the fifth pick in both leagues. You started with Devontae Adams in round one. In round three in both of them, you took Cooper Kupp. In round five in both of them, you took Mark Andrews. You didn't take a running back until round six in both leagues. Now, we talked about this on SiriusXM with you. I'm going to call it the modified running back strategy. It's not the no running back strategy, but the modified running back strategy. And you said you like to do it that way. Explain.
Well, when I started doing high stakes fantasy leagues in 2014, I was always a big fan of receivers, but I would always mix in, tight ends at some point. I would mix in a running backs at a certain point, and this modified or zero RB strategy. There's no true definition to it.
Right.
There are many different variations of it, but when I started really doing some research and absorbing the information for what it was, in order to truly maximize that potential, I wanted to incorporate the tight ends as well because they're receiving, and obviously they are. And if you look at the playoff bracket, you have 3 teams that are making it at the end of the year. The tight end position only has maybe 3 or 4 guys that are in a certain tier.
Right.
And the separation between that tier and the next tier, there's quite a difference between the two. So I made it a focal point to grab a tight end within the first 5 rounds because I feel that would have given me the best chance as far as a point differential. And I discovered this information at the end of the 2020 season. So entering 2021, I knew this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to take my tight end before my running back, at least one of the top tier tight ends, and then worry about my running backs from round 6 through 10. And it worked out very well. It was a strategy that I felt comfortable with because, again, with the extra game now, and I mentioned this to you guys, they don't make LaDainian Tomlinsons anymore.
Right.
And we keep chasing that. And we had a glimpse of it with Christian McCaffrey, but now he's got some injury concerns, soft tissue injury concerns, nevertheless, which really concerned me. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to focus my draft on key positions because I feel like these guys give me the best chance to compete in the higher stakes leagues from a receiving standpoint.
Yep.
And within the first 5 rounds, I wanted 4 wide receivers and a tight end. And then I'm going to fill in my draft accordingly after that. It worked. I did target these same players as you alluded to in both of these drafts. It worked out perfectly. And, the rest is somewhat history.
It definitely is. Now, that's a strategy, and it makes a lot of sense, especially the way you explain it. It's not one that a lot of people feel comfortable doing. I mean, I'm old school myself. If I don't have a running back after round 5, I'm going nuts. There's no doubt. Is this a strategy that you think you'll use this year as well? And will others copy you think?
For me personally, yes, because I feel it's where I know the best. Other guys in the industry do a way better job of diversifying their rosters.
Mm-hmm.
Their roster construction and the way that they build teams. For example, in my primetime league, the guy that was in first place for the majority of the season had Derrick Henry and Najee Harris. Those were his
Mm-hmm.
first 2 picks.
Right.
Once Derrick Henry got hurt, unfortunately, that's a lot to make up. Now, I'm not saying you can replace a wide receiver easily. Obviously, you can't, but it's easier to replace him.
For sure.
Because if Cooper Kupp, for example, gets hurt, you're not replacing Cooper Kupp, but you could plug in a Van Jefferson for a week or 2.
Right.
With Derrick Henry, we don't even know who the second running back is going to be week in and week out. So I feel comfortable even from a standpoint where if he did get hurt, I can replace him a little bit easier. Therefore, it's less to worry about.
Right.
At least for me. So it is a strategy that I'm going to be using again. As far as guys copying, I would like to just let them know that you automatically know that at the conclusion of your draft, you need to hit on a couple of waivers.
Mm-hmm.
You already know that going in. That alone is very stressful, but it applies to everyone.
Right.
If you're running back heavy, you're going to want to hit on a waiver. If you're receiver heavy, you're going to want to hit on a waiver. If you don't draft a tight end until late, you're probably going to have to hit on a waiver. So it applies to everyone, but knowing that you're going to be limited with the running backs, you really have to pay attention because there was Elijah Mitchell was there last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, for me, yes, I'm comfortable with it. For others that are thinking about it, I truly believe it gives you the best advantage to at least compete. Not guarantee wins, but at least compete at the highest level.
Right, definitely. So I understand why you would take Adams at 5. That's who you're targeting. We have KDS, and I'm sure that was one of your top ones. But let's talk about the third round then. Cooper Kupp, you got them both at 32. 1, there was no guarantee he was coming back there. 2, you couldn't have seen the type of season he had. Nobody saw the type of season he had, correct?
Absolutely correct. But what I did notice was the NFFC has a great tool for this, and I use the ADP in all my drafts, especially as we get closer to the higher stake season. And Cooper Kupp was living in the 3rd round.
Yep, he was. Yep.
So I knew I was comfortable taking him in the 2nd, but ADP is screaming at me, telling me that I can wait a little bit to grab him.
Mm-hmm.
So I rolled the dice in a sense, and he was there in both times. And he was a great pick. I truly felt that he can outproduce his ADP, and he obviously did. But no, I did not foresee the season that he had. He was absolutely ridiculous from the very start of the season all the way to the end. It was incredible.
Right through the Super Bowl, in fact.
Yeah. Right, exactly. He rolled that all the way to the Super Bowl. And this is another situation where I like to compare the wide receivers and the running backs, because if you remember, I think it was when the Colts played the Patriots, and it was right in the middle of the playoff season for fantasy. The Patriots held Jonathan Taylor down pretty well.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden he burst out for a 68, 69-yard run, whatever it was, for a touchdown. And that saved a lot of the Jonathan Taylor owners.
Right.
In the playoffs, I don't want to wait for that and rely on that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Cooper Kupp was getting those points within a quarter sometimes.
Yeah.
And before that touchdown run, Jonathan Taylor had, I think, 104 yards, which is 10 points in fantasy. That's hard to win in the playoffs with your number 1 player.
Right.
So
definitely.
I feel safe with the wide receivers.
I totally agree with you. The one difference among these two teams, though, was your quarterback. So at the Silver Bullet, you did take Aaron Rodgers in round 7. That worked great. In the primetime, you took Joe Burrow in round 12, and that worked great. So I got to ask you, what do you normally do with quarterbacks? And was it just that Rodgers seemed like a value at that point?
Yes, Rodgers at that point seemed like a value to me. But as far as the quarterbacks go, what I like to do every year is I have a top 5
Mhm.
list as far as my cheat sheet goes for my quarterbacks. Now, once those 5 guys go off the board, it could be in any order. Once they go off the board, I like to pay attention to my next rated player, which in the prime time was Joe Burrow.
Mhm.
So when Rodgers went in the prime time, I think he went in round 7. Joe Burrow, as far as ADP, was going around 10, 11.
Mhm.
So I knew I had some wiggle room there and focus on my running backs and hopefully wait for Joe Burrow to come back. Plus, guys like Justin Fields were going, Trey Lance were going before Burrow. So he was dropping. And he was the perfect candidate because he's on a high scoring team. He harnesses immense talent. Obviously, he has a rapport with Jamar Chase. And I felt like the Bengals were ready to take a step up in that division.
Yeah.
So he was the perfect candidate for the primetime team. And he fell rather late. And I was happy where I got him. And as far as Rodgers in the Silver Bullet, I think he just fell at the right time. And I wanted to attempt to pair him up with Adams because I think I
Yeah.
told you guys on the NFFC chat that we had, they posted like a Jordan Pippen
Yeah.
reference.
Right. Last Dance. Yep.
Yeah, so there was something about that resonated with me. So I wanted to ride that wave potentially, and it worked out.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Adams knew it was the last dance. Rodgers was willing to come back, but Adams knew I'm out. I'm going.
Yeah.
I want to play with my Raiders. That's what I want to do.
That was it. Yep.
Yeah. So Josh Jacobs was your first running back that you took in both leagues in round 6. You took 5 straight running backs in the prime time. You took 4 out of 5 running backs with your next picks in the Silver Bullet. You had Kenyon Drake on both teams. You mixed in like Daryl Henderson. I think Michael Carter, Kareem Hunt was in there. Talk about your strategy then with running backs. You don't take one till round 6. You bang a lot of them, right?
Absolutely. You really need to focus in and commit for the next few rounds and zone in on these players. I strongly feel like they're there every year,
Mm-hmm.
but I like to incorporate a mix. So I knew that Josh Jacobs was going around this time as far as ADP is concerned, from around 6 or 7 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm looking at Josh Jacobs like, this guy, he's a team captain. He's gonna get all the goal line work. There's always room for upside with him as far as catching the ball goes. So he fits perfectly as far as a steady starter and a guy that I don't have to worry about because I know my points are going to come from my receivers. So whatever production I get from Josh Jacobs is great. And as I alluded to, he's the starter.
Mm-hmm.
As far as addressing the other starter, I wanted a guy that was on a high scoring team that was going to get the ball potentially as far as goal line carries go. And that was Daryl Henderson. He was the starter for the Rams.
Yep.
I felt like they were going to have more possessions than their opponents. Therefore, there was room for his output to grow on a week in and week out basis. And that happened right before he got hurt. And as far as Michael Carter goes, I always want to grab a rookie with upside.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that it was going to take Michael Carter at least 7, 8 weeks before he got his feet wet. And he was another guy right before his injury. He was becoming that guy.
Right.
Being utilized in the passing game. He was getting goal line work. He wasn't punching it in, which was a little concerning for me, but they were giving him the ball. And obviously, I'm a huge Kareem Hunt fan, just in terms of the Browns are not shy about using him.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get the ball a lot. They want to preserve Chubb a little bit from what I'm seeing in these last couple of years. So Hunt was a no-brainer. And then ultimately, Devin Singletary, who was a league winner for me. And I stress this out as much as I can when I talk to people in the industry. Devin Singletary was a running back on a team with Super Bowl aspirations, MVP caliber quarterback, excellent receivers, up and coming tight end, and there was a job opening at the running back position on a team like this. And I will grab that player 9 out of 10 times wherever I can, when I can, just for his upside alone. And he was that guy towards the end of the year.
Was Singletary a draft pick for you or a fab? I can't remember.
I picked up Singletary in the prime time in round. Actually, I have it here somewhere. in the 10th round.
Okay, sounds good. So let's talk about Fab, because Fab was kind of tough last year, right? There weren't any real diamonds out there. I mean, I think you picked up Rashad Penny on one team for $177, but it was tougher last year to improve your team in Fab, don't you think?
It was. There was a couple of gems towards the end of the year. There was Jeff Wilson, who had a
Mm-hmm.
really good stretch there for a minute. Gabriel Davis had a really
Yeah.
good there for a minute. But the winner was Elijah Mitchell. And what was unique about him was that he was there early in the year. And this is when guys don't usually spend all their fab at that point. And I'm one of those guys. I like to save it as the year progresses.
Yeah.
But I failed to recognize that for points that I mentioned with those other running backs, he fit that description with the 49ers.
Yeah.
And if I would have known, as most of us could say, I would have, opened up the bank account for him.
Yeah, well, people did. It was like $850 in week 2. So that's kind of tough to spend that much, but people were willing to, right?
Absolutely. And, he was well worth it. And
Yeah.
they love the guy from what I've seen. And the way
Mm-hmm.
that they used him, I think that's going to carry over into this upcoming year. So he's definitely a player worth watching for sure.
Yeah. I got to ask you on strategy on Fab. So like you said, you kind of regret not going in too early, but again, it takes a lot of you-know-whats to spend $850 in week 2. What's your strategy on Fab? Do you like to kind of spread it out, or if you see someone, you're all in?
I generally like to spread it out. I like to wait a few weeks before I really open up the account and go heavy on some of these players, because there's always development towards the end of the year. And if there's an injury or if there's an upcoming late bloomer, if you will, you want to be in contention on potentially adding that to your roster to make it better, or at least compete. And I think this year I'm going to make a small adjustment, because if we have another year where it's going to be tough to gauge these players and no one's really showing up in the first few weeks during Fab, if there's that one guy like Elijah Mitchell, why not take the risk and ride it out? Because you have one shot at this thing,
right?
And you want to compete. At least you can say you tried, versus waiting, and then at the end of the year you have all this Fab left and nothing to show for it.
Yeah. Definitely. So you said you like to get like one rookie running back with upside. This is going to be a tougher rookie class, don't you think? I mean, they didn't fall in the best places. I wish Breece Hall would have gone to, Buffalo or the Texans. I mean, he's with the Jets, but there's Michael Carter there. Is there any rookie running back or wide receiver that you saw from the draft that, I don't want to give your secrets away, but you're impressed on where they landed at least?
Yes, there were a couple. My favorite player, and I think he's already cracked my top 20 as far as my receivers go, is Treylon Burks. I love his landing spot.
Yeah.
Now, I know that Drake also was a popular pick amongst others, and they were concerned that he landed in Atlanta, but I think he's going to take a little bit longer to develop. I think he's safe. But as far as immediate fantasy impact, which is why we're all here, I think that Burks is the guy. His target share alone by default, I think, should put him in top 20. As far as his output is concerned, I really like his potential. There's no alpha on that team.
Nope.
Derrick Henry is 28 years old. There's no tight end really that I'm concerned with. I think his floor is extremely safe. I'm excited about his potential. And as far as the running backs go, you already mentioned, I think that Breece Hall, even though Michael Carter's there, I think they're going to complement each other really well. The Jets have a ton of talent. They have a lot of speed. If they can just figure out how to use it, he's definitely a player that I'm going to be targeting for sure.
Yeah, Packers wanted Treylon Burks. I mean, he would have been a good fit here, but from a fantasy perspective, he's the only one right now that A.J. Brown's gone. So he's definitely high up there. All right, let's talk a little bit about your history. So you first joined the NFFC in 2014, I believe, and you came to New York and you did a primetime. That's your one league that you did in 2014. I got to ask you, how did you find out about the NFFC, and how did you just jump right into the primetime and then right into a live event as well?
A good friend of mine who participates in the NFFC, Jeff Kozlowski, he got me into the NFFC. He was doing it maybe a year or two prior to me joining, and he would always talk up about it. I would always look at his draft boards. I'm like, wow, this is a lot of fun. You do this live? And he said, yeah. So I joined him in 2014, as you mentioned, and I never looked back. It's a lot of fun. The competition is second to none. I mean, you really need to show up every year
Yeah.
and put your best foot forward and compete with these guys, because there's a lot of information out there and they're the best in the business. So as I mentioned, you have to show up and know what you're doing. Early on, I always thought that roster construction should consist of my quarterback versus yours, and mine needs to be better. My wide receiver needs to be better. I need to have the number one guys, and that's just not the case.
Yeah.
Roster construction needs to come from a specific strategy that you're comfortable with and attacking the draft accordingly. And I learned that. It took a couple of years, but I learned that as we move forward.
Yeah, with our 6-point scoring system for the quarterbacks, new people come in, they're like, I got to have the quarterback. Look at all the points. But it's really the difference between your quarterback and the next quarterback. And it might not be that wide, right? But the tight end could be very different between your tight end and the 10th place guy in your league. I mean, that's huge. So I think it takes a while to get up to speed with our scoring and to understand all of that. But that's why I like the 6-point passing touchdowns, because it makes people think on how they want to attack that position and such. What do you remember from that first year in New York City at the live event? I mean, did you look around and go, damn, I didn't think it would be like this? Or was the camaraderie good? Or what was it like?
It was, upon entering the facility, I saw that my name was on a tab there. And I was like, oh, man, this is official. Then I started getting nervous. Like, wow, is this really happening? Then when we sat down and we started drafting accordingly, there was more pressure on not messing up.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember the strategy that I wanted to use, because even back then I was still a receivers kind of a guy, not that heavy into it, but I still wanted receivers. I think AJ Green was one of my first picks, and I just went blank after that. Like, oh, this is not working the way I thought it would work. Guys were going off the board when I didn't think they were going to go off the board. I really didn't dive into the ADP as far as the NFFC goes at that point. So it was more of a trial and error in the early going. But then once I got more comfortable and I started using the tools that were available, I settled in, used the strategy again, had some success in the later years. And I think it was 2019 when running backs were making their way up again into the first round.
Right.
And, that's when James Conner was a first-round pick, David Johnson, Miles Sanders was the sleeper pick that everybody wanted that year. And I myself deviated from the wide receiver strategy and went running back heavy. And Greg, the worst fantasy year I've ever had.
Yeah. Stick to your game plan. Stick to your game plan. Yeah, it's kind of weird through the years, because I think it was 2015 when all these running backs got hurt and they just went down. And the wide receivers were scoring 20-plus points a game. All of a sudden, the strategy shift of people were going wide receivers early and trying to grab a running back later. But starting like 2019, we started seeing the bell cow backs again. And you wanted to get one of those top 8, 9, or 10 guys. And you thought, well, I can find a wide receiver who'll get me 16, 17 easily. But it changes. Who knows what this year will be? Maybe there will be a lot of running back injuries, and we'll switch again. But so I can ask you, do people know who Thomas Libretti is when they come to New York live events? Are they going to know who you are now, or did they know you before? Did you have the camaraderie there before?
I'm very much okay with no one knowing who I am. That's okay with me. That's fine. I've made some friends in the industry over the years. There's a lot of great people there, guys that are always willing to talk, to that, rub elbows with. As far as the strategies are concerned, who knows more than the other. It's a lot of fun at the end of the day. And I wrote about this, and I spoke about it, that everyone that's in New York, they're the friendliest group of people. It's always a good time. Even when we have our intermission, everyone just gathers in a corner, and we talk about how the first few rounds unfolded. There's guys that I connect with on Twitter, and it's just an all-around great experience. But I'm okay with no one not knowing yet. That's fine.
But don't worry, they're going to know who you are. That's for sure. So yeah, definitely about it. So I got to ask you, when did you start playing fantasy football? Then I think you're like 40 right now, right?
40, yeah.
So when did you start playing fantasy football?
Probably like around 2009, 2010.
Okay.
When I really started getting into it. It started out with, just a bunch of friends doing local
Yep.
draft. Then we were drafting like, in our basement, and it
Yep.
just continued from there and expanded. And then I saw that, there's a higher stakes community out there that I wanted to connect with. And as I alluded to, my friend got me involved, and it's been a lot of fun ever since.
Yeah, cool. Do you play any other fantasy sports then at all, or not just football?
I attempted baseball, and I am still trying to develop that. It's something that has just failed. I've personally failed at.
Yeah.
I haven't really grasped that strategy yet, but mainly football, yes.
Yeah, well, trust me, baseball is a different animal. It's
It
a
really is.
marathon compared to a 100-yard sprint. 23 positions you're starting every week. There's injuries. There's the minor leagues. It's enough to keep you occupied for sure. Kudos to everybody who does both sports, and we do have a good amount of people that do both sports, but it is not easy for sure. So,
Absolutely.
all right. So you won over $240,000 last year. Did you do anything special with these winnings? Did you buy a house on Long Island or anything?
No, I've only done two things so far. One, most importantly, I enrolled in more primetime drafts for this upcoming
That's
season.
good. I like that.
And secondly, I just started a very small project. I started trying to connect with the fantasy football community in a way. So I started a podcast, and it's starting out very small. If it grows, great. If not, hey,
Yeah.
I'm just doing it for fun. Those are the only two things I've done so far. Saving, trying to relocate perhaps, but that's down the line.
Yeah.
And
Well, that's great. That's great. That's great. I like the podcast. I mean, the one thing right now, we talked about this in baseball, there are so many podcasts out there, and people are able to put out really good content right now. And in baseball, we had a whole new audience of young guys that showed up, and they're doing podcasts, and they saw the live events, and they went back and did more podcasts, and were like, the NFBC is fantastic. And I'm telling you, it was viral. People started joining us, I think, because they heard what a great experience it was. And so I encourage everyone to keep doing the podcast, but even something like this, I'm just trying to introduce you and other guys to the high stakes audience and to the fantasy audience to show you're just a normal guy, right? Just like anybody else who just has a passion for this. And now you're even turning it into podcasts as well. So kudos, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I thank you for that opportunity. And, it's a lot of fun. It's at the end of the day, it's a hobby, and it's something that we enjoy doing. I wish that we can have a season where, none of these players got hurt. It's the ultimate bragging right. My best versus your best, and let's see what happens. But you know what? It's not a part of the game. It's not genuine. You have to adapt, pivot when you can, and it just connects you with the right people. It's a very social event that lasts all season long, even extends beyond the NFL season.
Right.
There's college football that translates into the NFL. Who knows the prospects that are coming out? So it's all year round, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about, you talked about a level playing field. So the Silver Bullet is something we're very proud of. We've had this for 4 years now. And the Silver Bullet is one entry per person, a max of 240 teams, and a $35,000 grand prize. So everybody gets their one shot. That's why it's called the Silver Bullet. You beat 228 unique owners to win that one. How special is that, knowing everybody had their one shot? The best players in our industry had one shot, 228 of them, and you beat them all.
Yeah, that's the way you word that. Very, very humbling. But yeah, I love that contest for all the reasons that you mentioned. I echo all those reasons, and it's a lot of fun. And the fact that you are concentrating on one team with one goal, and to achieve that goal is fantastic. I want that person to be at the live drafts each and every year because it's a lot of fun. And those that are perhaps on the fence about joining, people that I talk to on a day-to-day basis, I highly encourage those guys to jump in and join because it's an awesome experience. You sit there, you have a couple of drinks, eat some food, draft your team accordingly, and, put your knowledge up against the best in the business, and hopefully you come out a winner.
Yep, definitely. And you're returning to the prime time in New York City. That's Labor Day weekend. We're at the Stewart Hotel September 2nd and 3rd. That's going to be a lot of fun. Maybe you got to bring that big check with you and just walk around with it, just right in everybody's face. What do you think?
Greg, if I could get on the train with that thing, yeah, I'll definitely do that. But yeah, maybe I'll incorporate it in there somehow if I can. Maybe I'll drive down there. But yeah,
Well,
that would be a lot of fun.
if you want to stay quiet, nobody knows you. You don't want to bring that big check then. So then just come in with a hat over your face and stuff. Make sure you take a picture of that big check. I need that for the site. All right. Hold that thing up and send a picture to me. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll do. We'll do.
All right. So now you've moved into the top 15 in the NFFC career earnings. I know that was a big year for you, but think about that. We've been doing this 18 years. You've been doing it since 2014. You are now among our top 20. Of course, it helps to win $240,000. But what does that mean to you? I know when I'm watching your face right now, you're like, wow, really? That's a pretty cool accomplishment too, isn't it?
To be honest, Greg, I had no idea. That's one of the archives that I didn't look at. But that's pretty interesting. Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yep. But those guys that have been on that for all these years, I've learned so much from those guys. Mm-hmm. And that goes back to 2014 when I started paying attention and how they were drafting. And it's the same names every year almost. So I started picking their brains a little bit, how they approach, their drafts, try to learn from them. But the fact that I'm in a top 20 is very humbling. So that's pretty interesting.
Let's talk about the ADPs because I want to talk about your draft prep. You don't get into a lot of draft champions or online leagues, but you're definitely watching the ADPs and such like that. And honestly, the ADPs were something we didn't give out there for a long time because I kind of figured whoever was doing the early drafts, they deserved those ADPs, right? They were really creating them. But then around 2018, I decided, you know what, this is pretty good PR. It's good to get people to see how the NFFC guys are drafted. Maybe they'll jump into the NFFC, and I think that has turned out good. Mm-hmm. You said that the ADPs are important to your prep. How do you use them?
They're my number one most important tool. To be honest with you, and not taking away from anybody in the industry, I don't like to overwhelm myself with data. Mm-hmm. I like to do things from a very simple standpoint, and one of those things is ADP, which is why I don't join in a lot of leagues early on, even though those are really good to get into to see for yourself where players are going. I do want that data to accumulate and generate. Therefore, I can use that down the line. I think it's the number one most important tool to use because, again, you can just see where and who is drafting these players and where they're going. So I do like to wait until that materializes. Therefore, I can use it to the best of my abilities. But that's one of the things that I do pay attention to. I do like high-scoring offenses with players that have a potential for an outbreak of some sort, a career year of some sort. So I do pay attention to that. But as you pointed out, ADP, number one tool for me.
All right, sounds good. I said I wasn't going to ask you a whole lot of strategies, but do you think there is any 2022 Cooper Cup out there? I mean, is there someone who is going to go from the third round to the fourth round to next year being the number 2 or 3 player drafted? It's very, very hard. Do you think there is someone out there?
To have the type of season that he had, I think it's fair to say no.
Yeah.
But technically there has to be somebody, right? There has to be someone that challenges that at the very least. And for me, I think Jalen Waddle is a guy for me. Mm-hmm. I know that they picked up Tyreek Hill, but I think that only helps Jalen Waddle. I think that the middle of the field is going to be wide open for him. He has a tremendous ability to run routes. He's got great hands. He has an excellent rapport with Tua that carried over into the offseason, and I think that's going to be a huge tell for what the potential could be for him. So he's definitely a player that I circled late last season. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I like the continuity that's developing there. I know Tua's got some people in the industry, scratching their head. They don't know what to expect from this guy. Yeah. But I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at what they're doing as a unit to gel, and I'm seeing it unfold. I'm hearing it unfold. So he's definitely a player that I'm looking at. I already have him circled as a potential target. And, he's right in that third round right now.
Yeah.
And we'll see how things develop. He might go late second now, but he's definitely a player I'm targeting.
Yeah. One other thing that we do that's kind of unique in the NFFC is we allow you to pick your preferred draft spot, the KDS. Nobody else does that. that helped you last year because you knew you wanted to take a wide receiver early on. I mean, if you had randomly gotten the number 1 pick, you probably would have had to take Adams there to keep with your strategy, right? So
Yeah.
let me just ask you, where are you thinking about KDS this year, knowing that you're seeing a few wide receivers going earlier this year in the first round?
Definitely number 1, I would like overall, because
Okay.
I would like to grab Cooper Kupp again.
Yep.
He did so well for me last year. I feel like I owe it to him to
Yeah, you better get a Cup jersey at the very least, right?
Yes. So, as an honor in his name, I would like to take him number 1 overall. I like the first 4 or 5 slots, to be honest. That's
Okay.
where I want to draft, because I do want to grab a receiver. There's 5 guys that I would feel comfortable taking in the first round. But, that's not to say that you can't win with Jonathan Taylor. You absolutely can.
Right.
It's just that you need to really diversify your roster, and those other picks need to really make that team come together. For me personally, I can do that with the receivers. So from 1 through 5, that's where I would like to draft.
Yeah, sounds good. All right. I'm going to give you one last one here. Any advice for people who might consider getting into the NFFC? I mean, I know you've already said that you recommend it, but some people feel like they're overwhelmed. There's too many guys who've been in it too long. I don't know how I could compete against those guys. You're living proof that you certainly can, right?
No, absolutely. And if you're thinking about it and you're nervous for those things that you just mentioned, there's the Silver Bullet League that you can enter. If you feel like, it's a little bit too much to jump into from a first go at it, there are other leagues that you can get into, cheaper alternatives, if you will. And that's a great starting point. I think that the way that you guys have your scoring system balances out everything perfectly. The 6 points per touchdown for quarterbacks, I think, neutralizes the playing field very nicely, because we see it every year. The year that Cam Newton had a few years ago, he won very early the following year.
Yep. Does
it work out? It can work out. You just have to draft the rest of your players accordingly. So if you're on the fence, I strongly recommend it. It's the best. If you can't make a live draft, you draft online. Those same guys that are at the live drafts, they're there as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. There's no getting away from the good players. People are like, well, what about New York? That looks easier. No, it's not easier. How about Las Vegas? No, that's not easier. How about online? No, that's not easier either. So, okay, so the prime time this year is now a $250,000 grand prize. Our RotoWire Online Championship is $250,000 grand prize. Like you said, the entry fee for the Silver Bullet is $1,000 compared to $1,750 for the prime time. So it's a good entry point. And again, only 240 unique spots available there in the Silver Bullet. So I think we're going to have a record year. I think people are hyped for the NFL. The NFL draft was exciting last weekend. I don't know about you, but I'm a Packers fan. I am just excited. I can hardly wait for the season to start. I can hardly wait for the schedule to come out. Come on, NFL. Get that schedule out. They're too late this year with it. But you're hyped, aren't you, for this year?
Oh, absolutely. I'm all go now. Everything, all the data that you collect from this point forward, you use to your advantage. You try and compare and contrast notes that are happening in current drafts. And, it's an exciting time. This is the time of the year where you really want to get going, read as much as you can, and come up with your cheat sheets.
There you go. All right, Thomas Libretti, two-time national champion last year. He's back to defend the Primetime and the Silver Bullet. We're happy to have him today on the High Stakes Fantasy Network. Thomas, thanks for taking the time with me. Good luck, and enjoy New York when you go on out there. Tom and Derek will take care of you. They're buying the beers this year, all right?
No, drinks are on me. But
I love it. I love it.
Thank you for having me, Greg. I really appreciate it. Best of luck to you.
All right, thanks, Thomas. All right, we'll be back next week. I got a special guest next week. He let me down last week, but that's because he's in Mexico right now vacationing. But I'm getting him next week, so tune in next week. You're going to love it. Thanks, Thomas. Thanks to everybody for joining us, and have a great